Welcome to Tech Tuesday by Full Sail University. My name is Luis Garcia, Vice President of Emerging Technologies at Full Sail University. Today we're streaming from our beautiful Full Sail University Orlando Health Fortress, and we have a very special episode for you. Our today's guest is Mr. Rob Cado. He is the Program Director of Game Studies and Simulation and the 2021 Modeling and Simulation Hall of Fame inductee at the National Center for Simulation. Rob has a very long, impactful career that spans over 30 years teaching technology at all levels, from high school, university, and professionals. So let me give you a quick background of Rob. Rob graduated from University of West Florida in 1990 with a degree in technology education, and also holds a master's degree in leadership for higher education from Capella University. After graduating in 1990, he went back immediately to work creating one of the first computer-based labs for a high school, for a very progressive high school back then called University High School. And then by 1994, he had created a fully immersive virtual reality lab in a high school, the only one in the world. Throughout 94 and 95, he partnered his students at the high school with NASA to create a full simulation of a 1/40th scale of a space shuttle launch. And then by 95, Rob has joined Full Sail University to create and teach the very first virtual reality course here at Full Sail. Full disclosure, I was a student. So since then, Rob has created some of our institution's most iconic programs, like our game development bachelor's degree, our game design bachelor's degree, our game design master's degree, and the computer science bachelor's degree, and his latest bachelor's in simulation and visualization. All these programs have educated over 6,000 graduates that have gone to work on the most important game studios and technology companies all over the world. Rob has also created some of our most important technology learning spaces at Full Sail, places like the Blackboard Studios, the Fab Lab, the AR/VR Lab, and the Simulation Lab. He's received numerous awards from many places like the Air Force and Disney and Full Sail University and many other trade, education, and technology institutions throughout Florida and the nation. And now he has been inducted as the 2021 Modeling and Simulation Hall of Fame at the National Center of Simulation. So we're incredibly proud and happy to have Rob here. Welcome, Rob, to Tech Tuesday.
Thank you, Luis. I'm honored.
All right. So for those that are watching our stream, we're going to go over some of our questions here in the studio. But if you have any questions for Rob, please go ahead and send it through the comments in your stream, either in YouTube or Facebook. And our team's going to pass those to us, and we're going to address those in the second half of our show. So let's start with the first question, Rob. I like to always ask everyone that I get to interview, how did you fall in love with technology, and what's most important to you about it?
Well, in the late 80s, I was working as a cabinet maker, and on the side, I attended a middle school after-school program, so I could build some stuff for my own house and family, and met a gentleman named Jerry Ham, and after several conversations with him, decided that teaching shop was something I'd like to do. So I packed up my family. We moved up to Pensacola, and I went to University of West Florida for their technology education program. And while I was there, AutoCAD came around, and the school got a copy, and I jumped all over it and learned it fairly quickly, and ended up teaching the professor. And then he asked me to teach the rest of the students. So that was my first introduction to technology.
What do you love the most about technology?
What it does is it makes being creative and inventive a whole lot easier. So just from 1995 all the way up until today, technology has made us, in my world, the maker world, the ability to really expand our horizons and do the creative things that we've been thinking about and wanting to do, but electronic hurdles, software hurdles, things like that, were always in the way.
So you've done a lot of projects over the years, and we have some of them here to showcase, but you and I have talked about over the years. I know the space shuttle project is one that is very special to you. So before I ask you a question, I want to play a real quick clip on that.
5, 4, 3, 2.
Every time I watch this, it blows my mind. And when you think about it, high school students in 1994 and doing that simulation is quite incredible, quite remarkable. So how did the idea of this particular project came about?
So I opened up University High School, and we had the first real technology education program in the state. And we had 3 classes, a Tech 1, 2, and 3, and there was nothing for the 4th year. And I had students in the 3rd year that wanted to stick around, and so we created an elective for the 4th year. And in the 3rd year, somebody gifted us with a foam rocket-powered shuttle-looking rocket. And I approached them and I said, hey, look, we're this close to the Space Center. What if we were to create a 1/40th scale, because it was roughly that size, shuttle complex? And they were all on board. And so the first thing we had to do was sit down, and as you can see, we had the fixed surface structure, the rotating surface structure, the crawler, and so they had to sit down and go through the whole design process of researching the real thing, scaling it, and then designing it in CAD, and then from there building it. And so that began that whole experience. And in the process, NASA got wind of it, and the head of the education program at NASA came over, and they, which was quite a feat, got Robert Crippen, who was the first shuttle pilot, to come over and do the launch for us.
Wow.
And so we had this incredible weight on our shoulders that we had to get it right. And I was walking through a hobby store and saw a 1/50th, 1/60th scale space shuttle that actually flew radio control.
Wow.
And I went to the guy that owned the store, and I says, who did that? And he told me the guy's name was Scott Todd, and gave me his phone number. And I called him up and I said, hey, look, this is what we're doing. I'd really like you to come help us out. And he was like, yeah, well, maybe. I says, just like Full Sail, come see what we're doing.
Right.
And as soon as he walked in the door, saw the mobile launch platform, saw the lab, he was all in, and he designed a 1/40th scale real space shuttle. And then from there, we expanded to the point where we had 3 aerospace engineers and about 11 NASA engineers that were working on the project. And I think the most significant thing I've learned is that I don't have the ability to do everything myself. And so over the years, I've learned that if I surround myself with people that are smarter than me, that we can go long distances.
Right.
And that's what's happened. That happened with the shuttle project. That happened with the game development programs that we started, and definitely with all the guys that we've got in the SimViz program right now.
Now, to get to that simulation is 2 years. And so
yeah, it was a little bit more than 2 years because
Wow.
we started in 92-ish, late
Right.
92-ish. Yeah.
So it was the same group of students that went through all the years?
I had 3 students that started it all, and then once it caught on, then I had a lot more students wanting to get involved, and I ended up the 3rd level of that program became the shuttle experience.
Now, the clip that we watched, that is at the high school, I believe, right?
That's at the high school. We actually went out and poured concrete and made, we call it 39D. We had a cryo unit that's set off to the side with dry ice in it.
Uh-huh.
So all the cryo components that you see in a regular shuttle, we had that.
Okay.
We had a water suppression system. We had fake
So
rockets.
water came in also?
Yeah. We had fake rockets that were smoke rockets that gave all the smoke. The crew capsule came out of the way. And because we had NASA engineers on it, they wrote out the complete script. And so we had 9 stations and all mic'd up, and Bob Crippen was sitting there, and we even had a launch hold for a technical problem, and then that launch, it was incredible. It couldn't have gone off any smoother, and CNN was there, and I got word from somebody who has a friend that was in Czechoslovakia, and they had actually seen it on CNN.
Incredible. I love that project, and it still holds. It would be still incredible to do it today, let alone,
Oh yeah,
94.
nobody's repeated that. That's a feat, an experience that nobody's repeated. But it was interesting because that lab was full of new trends. Those students that went through while I was there, they're in their 30s and 40s now, and I'm sure they're talking about what they did compared to what students now are doing.
Incredible. So that was while you were at University High School, mm-hmm. and then you got hired to start our program here at Full Sail University. And I was a student at the time. I actually remember people being excited about hiring you. And my instructors before your course will say, we just hired this guy. He was doing amazing VR things at a high school. And we just got him. And I said, right here in Florida. And everyone was excited, which made me really excited to go and take your course. And but I always wonder, how was that transition from University High School into Full Sail University? I'm sure that a lot of things were similar, but a lot of things were very different. What do you remember of those days?
I remember it being a very, very tough decision because we had been given a school bus from the school, and we had built a launch control center inside this thing, and NASA had given us 9 consoles from the Apollo fire room. And we had completely decked it out, and in 1995, we had launched the second major shuttle, but from that launch control center. And Bob Seek, the shuttle launch director at that time, who had launched most shuttles, came over and launched the shuttle for us. But that bus was going to transition into us creating a rocket program that we were going to package as a kit and send to any school in Florida that wanted it. Wow. And then they would build an experiment. We would build the rocket. They would send their experiment to us. We would put it in our rocket, and we were going to shoot it up quite high down in the Melbourne area, and then retrieve it, video it, send them a video, send them their experiment back, send them their results. So it was a very tough decision, and I believe I turned ISIS down 3 times. But when I finally committed and came over, even though I'd been working at the Institute for Simulation and Training and had experience with SGI supercomputers at the time, walking into a lab that had 24 impacts and a Onyx reality engine with the headset and the tracking system, it was like, wow, what an opportunity.
Yes.
Yeah.
So your career starts, and right now is in simulation again. Like you have those bookends.
It's full circle.
It's full circle.
It is, because what I was doing at the high school is what I'm doing here, only with, you know, post-secondary students and with a lot better fabrication equipment.
But there in between those two, you have a whole career in gaming. And how did the idea of getting into gaming came about?
Well, the digital media program was really more an art-based program.
Right.
Art and design.
Art and design.
And at the time, you didn't have game engines.
Right.
So everything that you did needed a programmer.
Right.
And the students wanted to do things, but they couldn't program. So I realized that we had a need for a programming component, but with a few students were right there, willing and able, but
right.
They needed additional training. So I approached two other folks. One was a lab instructor and one was a course director in the digital media program. And I says, hey, let's sit down and put together a game program.
There were no game programs in the country.
Well, there was one that was starting or had started, Digipen.
Digipen,
yeah.
That's right.
So we got together and we put this game design program that had a little bit of design, a little bit of art, a little bit of programming in it. And when we sat down and looked at it, we went, yeah, that's not going to work. We're going to have a jack of all trades, master of none. Yeah. And because I wanted the programming side of things, we started focusing on the programming side and created the game development and game design and development program at the time.
This was probably 2000?
1998, 99.
Yes.
Yeah.
So it's been over 20 years. And I imagine that a game program fits really well with the idea of Full Sail back then, which was very focused on entertainment and media. We had the digital media programs, as you said, that it was a focus on art, but also recording art for music, film, for movies. So making video games is just another way of making entertainment.
Entertainment, yeah.
Right. Sure. But game development is really engineering. It's not art. And so I always wonder about, though, how to balance that in this, you know, in Full Sail, the excitement and love that people have for games with the rigor that it takes to develop them.
You know, young people have grown up at the time, have been growing up with video games for so long. And that concept of I'm good at playing video games, I should be good at making video games.
Right.
So we had a lot of people coming in, and a lot of them were more interested in design than they were programming.
Right.
So yes, it was a struggle at the beginning, and we ended up, you know, adding a math assessment to figure out where people's math skills were, so that we could help those that needed it, and the ones that didn't could continue on. But yeah, it definitely was because everybody wanted to make games that were of that age. And it was definitely an interesting time period with students that were more game players than they were game programmers. But we've had a lot of, well, Jameson Durrell.
Yes.
He never programmed before he got to Full Sail.
Wow.
And look at him now.
Yes, absolutely. Many others that did the same thing. Some of our Hall of Famers said that they didn't pass that math assessment, and they had to take the remedial courses and start from scratch and end up being in the best studios, making the best games. So actually is where I'm coming on next. So 98, 99, started probably graduating folks by 2000. So it's been 21 years. So when I think about 25, 21 years of games, is a whole generation of games.
Yeah.
And I have the pleasure of visiting a lot of studios around the country. Some of them, I mean, from the moment open the doors, there's full graduates in it, saying hi, and I'm working on some of the biggest games out there. So in my mind, it's not crazy to think that you have influenced the new generation of games, the latest generation of games. And I wonder, and I know you're very humble, but does that mean anything to you? Do you ever think about that?
You know, the most exciting thing is when somebody comes back and they tell you about what they're doing. But you know, the motto at Full Sail has been, you know, we take your dreams seriously, and realizing that many of these students that have gone through the game programs have realized their dream. It's not only exciting, but it makes you feel damn good. Yeah. But the flip side of that is when they come back and tell you what they're doing. So, and it's interesting because this past week I had a young person that was on the shuttle team at the high school and on the VR team at the high school. And he's currently working with SpaceX in their space program.
That's incredible.
And that's, you know, when you hear stories like that, that's the second story I've heard. Another story was a student that was working on the main engines for the shuttle. But then you've got, you know, we had 5 graduates that worked on Grand Theft Auto, and it was the highest selling game for the longest time. And it really makes you feel like all that time that you spent developing, hiring, getting the right people was all worth it, because these kids are doing some incredible things.
They are, indeed. Thank you so much for your answer. We have some great technology here. Let's go check it out.
Sure.
All right. So here's the virtual food flyer, and so it's a paragliding simulator. So
in this particular case, it can be paragliding or it can be powered paragliding. The configuration we've got it in right now is powered paragliding.
Okay.
So we're going to go ahead and fire it off. John Zabin is our flyer today, and John is the primary programmer for this particular experience.
All right. So while John is flying, and I don't know if you folks can hear, but here's air coming to him. But I really want you to describe, there are a bunch of inputs here. That is something he's grabbing over here, and he's doing this motion. And so all those inputs have to be captured in analog. It have to be, something has to do the math to turn them into digital inputs. How's that working? How's that happening?
So in virtual reality, the more senses that you can address, the greater sense of immersion, the deeper sense of presence.
Right.
So this is an output. So we take his acceleration and we put it into the computer, and it drives the fans. Okay. So we've got a haptic input or output. On the bottom, underneath it, is a bass shaker, and it vibrates based on the audio. So it gives the user the sensation that there's actually a motor on there. These devices are linear potentiometers, and they take linear motion, convert it into circular motion, and then this actually feeds a box up here that's got a microprocessor on it and a gyro. And the interesting thing about this is, especially with the experience, is the more you can make it like the real thing, the more immersed a person's going to feel. So from here down, it's exactly like a real paraglider or a powered paraglider. so John's going to kick his feet out. And when he does that, it tips this forward, and this gyro out there picks that up. And in this particular case, it gives you about 5 more miles an hour speed. This is the throttle, and it gives you altitude because of the type of aircraft you are. That's altitude. And then just leaning left and right also changes the gyro.
Right.
And it adds that input for another turn. So everything here is just like the real thing, and it, aside from putting a motor on, you're literally flying a powered paraglider. And the United States Powered Paragliding Association president and the United States Hang Gliding and Paragliding Association president both said that this is so real.
Tell me about this.
Okay, so again, your senses, the more you can incorporate. So this has a little servo on it, and this is nothing more than an atomizer. And so we put a scent in here, and then when we want it, we make the servo move, and it pushes the cap down, and it would sit right here and then shoot that scent up into the air flow here, and then give him whatever he's smelling at flying over scent.
All right, so all the inputs go into a box in here, and if you're watching, there's a big cable coming down, and it goes into a USB port into the computer, and there's another box in front of it that looks like a black box, like it's doing something.
It's all the power, and it also holds the amplifier for the bass shaker.
Okay.
But it also holds the power supply for the fans.
For the fans.
Yeah.
And then the USB cable is going to the computer.
Goes to the computer, goes into it's a Unity app.
Unity.
And then John grabs the raw data from all these sensors. Once he has that raw data, then he can decide what needs to happen here, what needs to happen there. And then we've got the flight dynamics that all these have an influence on.
All right. Well, thank you so much, John. We're going to go check out another piece of technology. So here's one of my favorite. This is called the SECO Interactive Ladder, and this is part of a course in the simulation program called Positive Cause. And so tell me about the objective of this of the course first, and then what is the problem that this particular technology is trying to solve?
Sure. So in our programs at Full Sail, we've got project and portfolio classes. And project and portfolio class 6 was headed down a direction. And we realized early on, within the first 3 months of the program, that it really wasn't addressing the needs for the students and addressing the concepts that they had previously picked up. Well, at the same time, we were working with Joe Latimer, a colleague of ours that was a quadriplegic, and we were using our tech to be able to create devices for him that would make his life easier. And as soon as those two things crossed paths, the light bulb went on in my head, and I went, positive cause.
Right.
Our Portfolio 6 class is going to be positive cause, and the students are going to work on and address issues for people that struggle with life's daily tasks. So this was one of the projects that we worked on. SECO is a conductive education school for students with cerebral palsy.
Okay.
And students with cerebral palsy have very difficult issues with muscle control. And one of the things they've been using for 70 years is a ladder, not only for reach and grasp, but also for coordination, for pulling themselves up, for sitting themselves down. But when I was touring their facility, I realized that there's nothing there that gives them any kind of feedback. And in today's day and age, they've got iPads at home, they've got games, they've got things that provide feedback,
right.
Whether the parent's using it for them or not. And so I put that in my head and sat on it for a while, and for at least 2 years.
Wow. And
then positive cause hit, and I went, we need to we need to hit that again. And so we approached Christina down at SECO and said, we want to try and build a device for you that's going to be more interactive. And so this is the prototype, and it originally 6 rungs are what they use.
Right.
And what we did was on the back, we put conductive ink, and we split it in the middle. So now you've got 2 inputs.
2 inputs per.
And so we've got 12 inputs, and it allows us to scroll up and down to a particular activity, push the green button. It brings the activity up. There's audio, it's visual, and because it's a muscle grasp type of activity, if they grab the right rung, that it provides the feedback for them. If they grab the wrong rung, nothing will happen. And if they get all the way to the top, then it provides them with that feedback. And Christina said that she hasn't seen an advance in conductive education technology like this in 70 years.
That's incredible.
So we took this, made several games, and the students developed all the games, developed the hardware. We've got a microprocessor here. They developed the Unity application. We gave it to them for a while, and all we had on it was music.
Right.
And they were so impressed. And then we provided this version for them, and they were just blown away. So we made a production model, and we took it down to them. I think there's a video of that.
We're going to play that.
And they had one of the things that we did, they thanked us by taking us out to dinner. And at dinner, we said, we're going to give you all the IP rights to this so you can make them, so that you can sell them,
Yeah.
because it's a nonprofit. And you know they need an income source. And so what they did was they found a patent lawyer that did some pro bono work for them. And this is now patent pending. And their plans are to be able to make enough for their institution, but also it's a great tool for a parent to have at the house.
Absolutely. Yeah. It's incredible. So we have a great video about those technologies. Let's go ahead and play that.
Assistive technology aims to improve the lives of people living with disabilities. In the Simulation and Visualization program, we ask students in the Portfolio 6 course to put their hardware and software skills to use towards a positive cause. The idea is, if anybody struggles with daily activities, what can we do to try and help them? And it's also partly just looking into the community instead of trying to, come up with some epic project, just looking down the street and see what's around here so we can participate in the local community. SECO is a facility down the street here that works with kids with cerebral palsy and a whole range of motor disabilities and things like that.
It's so important for me to give success for these kids because they lose it in very early ages. Started with like, I cannot roll over, I cannot reach for my toy, but I want to. But I think we can change their life and make them as independent in their own life as possible.
Their facility has lots of ladder devices like this because they use them for strength training and grip, climbing, walking. So when we toured their facility and realized that, we decided that's a good target. Let's see if we can try to digitize one of these and make it interactive.
Still works nice.
We gave the audio version to them just to play around with and see what they thought about it. And that alone had fantastic results. What they told us was a lot of these kids have trouble even lifting their neck. But when they were reaching up and pressing on it and it was making a sound, they were looking up to see what was going on. And that was a huge win for the staff over there. They were very excited to see that. But once we got past the audio version, we put on a monitor and a little computer. So now we could do software development and start making games and tie it into our inputs. And that's where the potential just went through the roof. The students were involved in every aspect of it. In fact, we were doing things that I had never done, so it was new to all of us, a lot of it.
Some of the challenges that we faced when constructing it were some electrical issues. We had some issues with the wiring and the paint methods to detect if people were touching it. We got some false triggers, which was a real challenge.
Even putting our hand near it, it was triggering false positives, and that was no good. Once we got past that, it was not too many challenges and just a lot of fun.
They started out very simple. They would grab a piece of the ladder and the screen would change colors. And then as soon as we got that down, we started coming up with a lot of other different ideas. And then from there, once we got some feedback from Seco to say, you know, this is good, or, you know, maybe this isn't very good, we just went from there and eventually just built those blocks up until we had something that both of us were really proud of.
This is something that some of my students and I have been working on for many months, and we made it to obviously look very similar to some of the devices you have here, these ladders. And we looked at some of the activities that you do and tried to make them into more like a game, a computer version where we can interact and get feedback. So does anybody want to try this out?
It's so important for our kids to get the technology closer to them because it's motivating them more. Almost all of our kids has an iPad at home. Now they have the motivation right in front of them. It gives us opportunity to develop head control, develop eye-hand coordination, develop holding grasp, and it's connected with a game which contains the opportunity to develop cognitive levels as well.
After we delivered the ladder, I got back and we started receiving pictures of the kids and the staff using it. And that's when it really kicked in. The smiles were so powerful.
A lot of the projects I had worked on previously usually involved some sort of training. It was really nice to see that there's just a totally different direction that the field can go.
Sometimes we just lose touch with connecting with people and helping out each other. And it's just like, do you need a helping hand? We can just help you with this stuff, make your life a little bit better.
For us, it was just work, but when you see the result of that and the smiles, that's when you realize you've done something much bigger than just worked on a project.
All right, so that was that's great, thank you. So here's another piece of technology. This one, you know, it's been with you for a very long time, as I understand. It's a flyboard. Tell me about this piece.
So when we set up we were invited to be a part of a thing called the Toy Scouts at the Institute for Simulation and Training. Mm-hmm. And I was able to take 5 students over there on Friday nights, and we were able to use and learn about virtual reality and use SGI equipment. An opportunity that was absolutely incredible. Well, SIGGRAPH that year, 94, was coming to Orlando, and I wanted a project from the high school. And so I designed this device based on a mini tramp, and we called it CyberSurf. And the resolution so bad that all we had was polygonal triangles, and you had to fly through them.
Right.
And that was the whole thing. But that project was the impetus that led the school to give us the funding to put our own little VR lab in at the high school. And this is the 3rd revision of that. The original was all out of wood.
Wow.
And the next one was a combination of wood and metal. And then this one's all metal. And it's unique because you have a mini tramp, and then underneath it, we've got a gyro. And in the middle, we've got a base shaker. Again, you know, trying to affect all the senses. And so you get up here and you can change direction this way, and then you can change direction this way. And that input allows you to fly. And so this has been a surfboard, it's been a hoverboard, it's been a jetpack, but then 3D printing has changed the way we do with fabrication. And so now you've got these things that we're able to iterate through. This yaws, turns you around. This one is the throttle, and then you got a button here, and you've got buttons here. This is designed to hold the headset when you're not using it.
Oh.
So it's.
And you showcased this one at ITSEC in
We
2019.
we had this at ITSEC, and we also had it at a couple other Orlando Tech conferences.
And this button, right, it could probably, fire something.
Yes.
And so you could be a hoverboard with.
I actually have a hoverboard with a 50 millimeter machine gun on it.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's super fun. All right, so there's a couple of things here that we want to review as well, and we're starting to get some questions from the audience. But this one always catches my eye because this is like a mini version of the big simulator that we have at the Sim Lab. That's right.
So this is their first fabrication project, and they designed everything inside a package called SolidWorks, and then they make all the motion in SolidWorks. In other words, they simulate it in SolidWorks to make sure that none of the motion is interfering with anything. And then in the Fab Lab, they fabricate all the pieces, whether it's 3D printed, laser cut. We've got a circuit board on here that they design and then cut on our CNC machine. They populate it with all the electronics, populate it with the microprocessor, and then they program the microprocessor to go through the 6 degrees of freedom. And once they've got that, then they take this and they integrate it with a Unity project. And that Unity project is some type of controllable vehicle. They design their own input device. The input device controls the Unity vehicle, and then we extract the data from Unity and dump it to the motion base, and then it does the motion.
And that's a 6 degree of freedom.
6 degrees of freedom.
It's pretty amazing. So we have some questions from the audience already. They've been people that are on the stream. And I was reading some of the questions. One particularly interesting about failure. So I imagine all of this thing had to do with trial and error. So, and young people usually are so afraid of failing. What is your view on failure?
So when we started the simulation program, it's very much a project-based degree program, but more than that, for me, it's a mistake-based degree program.
A mistake-based.
So
I love that.
It's not like we're encouraging our students to make mistakes. We allow our students to make mistakes because, as far as I'm concerned, the best teacher is a mistake. And if you can then go back, evaluate your mistake, make changes, and be successful, you've learned more in that process than somebody that does a project, makes a mistake, gets a bad grade, and then has to continue.
Right.
So if somebody makes a mistake, we're okay with it. We want them to go back and evaluate what it was that they did wrong and then iterate through it, because it's that process of iterating through your mistakes or modifications that you truly learn.
Yeah, it applies also to programming. There's no way to program without making mistakes.
Right.
It's the only way to learn,
True.
And debugging and all that. Someone else also wanted to know, you've been in technology for so long, and how do you keep yourself updated for the latest technologies?
Well, of course, there's websites that I go to. There are, I'm a part of the Association of Manufacturers and Engineers. I'm a part of IEEE. And then, of course, there's your own individual research into the technology that's coming. And then because we have the tech labs, we have vendors that are constantly coming in and updating us on what's available. And then, of course, like I said earlier, I've surrounded myself with people that are smarter than me, and they're doing all their own research. And we encourage our course directors, to work on personal projects, and so that is also included in all that.
So do you have an example of a technology breakthrough that perhaps people don't know about, but you're really proud of?
You know, the flyer, there's nothing like that in the world. There are some people that have tried, but haven't been able to actually get it to work. But there's one project that I worked on when I was at the high school, and I was involved with a gentleman from Ohio that worked for the Air Force, and it was a project for brain actuated control.
Oh wow!
And we developed, and I wish I had the technology I have today back then. But we developed this device that sat on the back of your head where your occipital lobe is, and the Air Force actually had somebody control a simulator and roll it just using brain control. And we were, I still have the device in a box at the Fab Lab, but we were really close. And then I came to Full Sail, and that whole project died out. But that was one that was quite incredible that we were actually doing that at a high school. And again, it's finding the people that are smarter than you, that want to help and see that what you're doing and what you've done displays the fact that projects will get completed.
So I always like to ask technology leaders, you know, when you look at all this and the games that our graduates are working on, I mean, it could be very intimidating. And so what do you advise somebody that would like to pursue a career in technology?
Do it. You know, microcontrollers are really cheap. A soldering pack is cheap. There are proto boards out there that you can do electronics with. There are programming languages that are real easy. Unity is an environment that is very, very user-friendly. And it's not like in '95 when you were going and doing VR, we didn't have Unity. Everything had to be coded from scratch.
That's right.
And so the biggest thing is, if you see something that you want to do, just go do it.
It's incredible to be able to build on 50 years of innovation. You know, when we were doing VR in '95, everything that was around us was incredibly expensive. We were sitting on hundreds of thousands of dollars a year to be able to navigate polygons.
Right.
And today you can do that with thousands of dollars.
Yes.
And some of the things that we have here is hundreds or even less.
Right.
I mean, what does that do to the ability to create?
It makes it accessible.
Right.
You know? The average person can now go do this stuff, whereas before, you know, you had to work for a company, you had to be at an institution that had the equipment,
right?
Or like us, you had to be invited to an institution that had the equipment,
right?
So it makes it accessible.
So with that, I think that today we're living in the most exciting time to be in technology ever. You know, so it's 50 years of innovation that we can build on, and it makes me very optimistic about the future because of the kind of problems that we can solve that before we couldn't even frame.
Right.
And now we not only can frame, we can also combine different technologies in order to solve them. So I think we're going to solve, you know, the world is full of problems, but I think that we're going to be able to solve a lot of them. When I entered into the technology world, I got to build websites, and that was great. And you know, the internet was a great revolution. But if you are entering technology today, you get to solve some very important problems for the world, and which is why I will tell anybody to get into technology. Is really, really exciting. So, what do you see in technology today that makes you really excited about the future?
That headset that has a lot of weight to it, it's very bulky. At some point in time, that's going to be a pair of glasses. And then not too far past that, it's going to be a pair of contacts. And then you tie that in with, I brought it up before, but brain-actuated control.
Right.
And those two things, although they might sound very scary, for me are very, very exciting. Because now the amount of information you'll be able to get as you're walking down the street is going to be absolutely incredible. And so that's just in my world of visualization.
Right.
But you take and apply that level of technology to space, to vehicles, to planes,
To health.
to health, it's going to be incredible.
And then now you get more data than you can ever hope for. But now you got the processing power to go through it, and you got artificial intelligence, which has been around for 30, 40 years, but now it's really where you can harness it. What do you think is the role of artificial intelligence in everything?
Whether it's AI, deep learning, whatever you want to call it, it's gonna help solve a lot of problems that we never thought were solvable.
Right.
And I think that's really where it's gonna hold its own, is to be able to crunch the numbers and think of solutions that we wouldn't normally think of, or try and go down that path. They can do it, and they can do it fast. And that's really going to make a difference.
Any project that you're excited to work in the future?
I'm working on a project right now. A gentleman that for 30 years was called the voice of Oshkosh, and he had a plane that was an example of the very first ultralight. And a friend of mine, after he passed away, it was given to him, and he gave it to me. And so at my house, I've got it sitting there, and I'm going to make a simulator out of it, so you'll be able to fly the very first ultralight. But more importantly, I'm going to take it to Oshkosh, which is this huge. This year they had over 600,000 people attend.
Wow.
But I'm going to take it up there, and you'll be able to fly in virtual reality at that site where he announced in his ultralight that is signed on the rudder by Bill Moyes and Francis Regallo, two very instrumental people in the hang gliding world. So that's exciting for me right now.
That's incredible. Well, I'm excited to have had this conversation with you, Rob. I have tremendous amount of respect for you. And I want to thank everyone that joined us over the stream, to send in their questions, to sharing this time with us. And I want to invite you in a few weeks, we'll have another episode of Tech Tuesday. Thank you very much for joining us. Goodbye.